Steve Adubato from MetroFocus. It is my honor, everyone's honor here at MetroFocus, to be talking to New York Times bestselling author, host of the Tavis Smiley Show on PBS, talking about his new book, Before You Judge Me, The Triumph and Tragedy of Michael Jackson's Last Days. Tavis, an honor.
An honor to be on your program, sir. Thank you, Steve.
Let me ask you, you and I were just talking before we started this conversation. Never met Michael Jackson?
Met him once or twice.
Yeah.
Never spent any time with him. But
Real time?
Yeah.
But you knew his mom?
Yeah, sure.
Connection? Indiana? Is it the Indiana connection?
Indiana.
Talk about the Indiana connection.
Michael grew up in Gary, Indiana, as you know, steel town outside of Chicago. I grew up a couple hours down the road in north central Indiana, cornfield. My dad's in the Air Force, so we're the only black family in the trailer park that we lived in, one of a few black families in my school. So Michael's environment is very chocolate, and I'm growing up in a vanilla slice, but we're both in the state of Indiana a couple hours apart.
So as we talk about this, one of the things that struck me about the book is the personal connection. Mm-hmm. You felt the real personal connection to him.
When I was a kid, first of all, as I say in the epilogue, I think, I hated the name Tavis. I would get teased all the time with a name like Tavis Smiley, and kids can be cruel. They'd call me Tavis Smelly, not Smiley, Smelly.
Did you have another name?
I basically, in my head, fell in love with the idea of being named Michael. Because I'm watching the Saturday morning cartoon, I love Michael, and I love the Jacksons. And so, I love the Jacksons, but to your point, I love Michael. And I sort of renamed myself Michael. So I connected to Michael, not just artistically, but I connected to him in the energy of his persona. Again, I love that cartoon. And, as it turns out, I grew up in a Pentecostal church, a very strict, charismatic, religious environment. There are so many things we couldn't do. It was wrong for me. It was a sin, literally, in the church I grew up, Steve. It was a sin to listen to secular music. You were going to hell if you listened to secular music. So I had to sneak to watch that cartoon. I had to sneak to watch him on Soul Train. I had to sneak to listen to him on the radio. But I made a connection with him nonetheless, even though I was going to hell for listening to him as a child in the tradition of my faith upbringing.
Now, you're an author of 18 books. One of the most powerful that I loved was the book on Dr. King.
Yeah, thank you.
Right?
Thank you. Yeah. The link between Martin and Michael is really a last days sort of connection. The King book, as you know, is about the last year of Dr. King's life. So the entry point is his Beyond Vietnam speech here in New York City at Riverside Church. Gives that speech coming out against the war in Vietnam, calls America the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. And everybody turns on Martin. He dies broke, and Harry Belafonte has to pay for his funeral because nobody wanted to be around Dr. King. He was toxic in the last year of his life, last days. Michael, same thing, except it's not the last year, it's the last 16 weeks. The entry point is his going to London to say, this is it, Steve. This is it. I'm coming back one more time. 16 weeks later, he's dead. When he makes the announcement, to your point earlier about my connection to his mother, I make a phone call to his mom, say, you know what? Can you hook a brother up with some tickets?
Yeah,
I want to call
that.
Michael. Everybody's calling Michael. So can you hook a brother up? So I got.
And by the way, she said she would get you good tickets.
She hooked me up. So I have my concert ticket, Steve. I bought my plane ticket. I have my hotel reservations. I'm on my way to London to see this last performance of Michael Jackson. He dies on me. So I want to know, as a fan, and back to my Indiana roots, what happened between the time you said you were going to come back one more time and 16 weeks later? What happened? What happens in our lives when we're fighting to get back to center, when we're trying to find that moral compass, if you will, that thing that drives us, that makes us who we are? We've gotten off center, and we're trying to get back to who we really are, and we don't make it.
Tavis, let's pick it up with the doctors. Comrade Murray. He was the one who was administering the propofol. There was another doctor, Dr. Klein, administering the
Demerol.
Explain what one was for. The propofol, was that to fall asleep?
Fall asleep.
Because Michael Jackson was having a hard time.
Yep, couldn't shut it down. Insomniac to the 10th power.
With anxiety.
Yes. And there's a part in the book, as you know, where I quote Michael talking to someone where he says he didn't want to sleep too long. He wanted to sleep, but not too long. He was afraid that if he slept too long, God would give all the good ideas to Prince. True story, Michael said that. But Demerol is what's being given him by Dr. Arnie Klein for the other issues that he's had, the plastic surgery, et cetera, et cetera. So he's taking Demerol from one doctor, propofol from another doctor. It turns out to be a damning cocktail, as we found out, after his death. Yeah.
Go back to the concerts. He signs to do 10. All of a sudden it becomes 50.
Michael couldn't have done 10 shows, in my judgment, in the condition he was in. But 50? Who does 50 shows? So the concert promoters are greedy. All the creditors got their hooks into him. There are other...
Sorry for interrupting.
No, please.
Family.
His father wants Michael to... Joseph wants Michael to scrub the concerts in London and do a reunion tour with his brother. But everybody's just on him. And so it's one of those things where, on the one hand, you have to be careful what you ask for when you get that kind of fame. Michael wanted that. Let's be clear about it. He wanted to be the biggest and the baddest and the boldest in the world. So you got to be careful what you ask for. That's the lesson, I think, for Michael and other artists who were, put fortune and fame above everything else.
What did we misunderstand about him?
In no particular order, number one, something happens not just to stars, but to everyday people, everyday fellow citizens. When we live lives where we become rudderless, you got to be anchored to something. And when our lives become rudderless, we drift away. And so I think some of us didn't see Michael becoming as rudderless as he was. I think we missed that story of how he drifted away. He drifted like right in front of our very eyes. The second thing is and we know about the self-medication, but when people try to paint Michael as a drug user, a drug abuser, like Prince, I think we missed the story that they're not recreational users. Michael was using it because he couldn't sleep. He was using it because of the pain that he was in. Prince was using it because of his hip. And that's not, I regret, I'm sad, not just regret, I hate, sad that both of them are gone. But you got to put that in context. And finally, it's what I said a moment ago, that we get so caught up in their iconography, we lose sight of their humanity. Can you imagine what it would be like to not have had a childhood? I loved and relished my childhood. I can't imagine not having had a childhood.
Which you say he did not.
He did not have. He never had a childhood. And so when that's taken from you, and you got people who are pushing you and pressuring you and beating you, and they want more hits out of you, and everybody's into you for something, and you're a child, and you don't have a childhood, that has huge implications later on.
Some people say, wow, Michael Jackson died at 50. He died so young. Yeah. You say, wow, he died at 50. He lived that long.
Yeah. When you get into this text and you see that last 16 weeks, and all the hell that he's under, all the pressure that he's under, the expectation that he's under, it's just hard to imagine. And so again, I don't make excuses for Michael Jackson. He had many wounds that were self-inflicted. He was human, not human and divine, but I am more brought low by the pain of how he had to navigate all that he was under for that period of time, and how he made it, I quite frankly don't know.
On behalf of everyone, public television family, thank you.
You are a good man. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate you.